Let's bring it in. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's David Thorpe, and we're delighted to be joined by Wayne Winston. How are you, sir?
Fine, thanks.
I'm going to read your bio here. You're the Professor Emeritus of Decision Sciences in the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. You hold a BS in Mathematics from MIT and a PhD in Operations Research from Yale. You won over 40 teaching awards at IU. Has written over a dozen books, one of which is called Mathletics and is coming out in a newer version soon. Dr. Winston has taught classes and consulted for many leading global organizations. He's also a two-time Jeopardy champion, which we don't talk about nearly enough, and has consulted for the NBA's Dallas Mavericks and New York Knicks. And also, he does charades, which his daughter just showed us a little video of. Judy, can we show that? It's perfect. I love
That's
this.
my favorite part of Wayne is the charades, because I want my kids to start doing it.
Yeah, my daughter makes me do crazy things.
I love that.
That's the best part about kids.
That's true.
How many kids do you have?
Jennifer's 31 and Gregory's 26.
Okay. Judy, can we show? Oh, here we go. Here we go.
What year was that?
2019 says on the
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing
My hair is darker because I haven't been able to swim in the pool.
you're trying to show that your hair is a wig.
He's trying to make him say Kristen Wiig. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, I can remember now. And
Did they get it? Did this succeed?
No. She's a big game player. Now she's playing Risk online with all her college friends.
Oh, that's so cool.
Okay, so and we have a lot of important things to talk about. But before that, let's this Jeopardy thing. I think I'm right that you won a giant supply of I can't believe it's not butter.
Like touch of butter and Eskimo pies, a year's supply.
Wow.
What does that mean practically? Like you just have all these things in your house? You have a freezer full
We gave it to charity.
There you go. There you go.
I won $16,800.
And what? How many Eskimo pies?
I don't even remember. It was 28 years ago. It's online. People could probably find the episode. I don't like to see myself 28. Oh my God. That's me 28 years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I actually looked okay then.
Look at that hair.
Yeah, it was not white.
Were you nervous
at that time?
Yeah, Jeopardy. After being on I was totally nervous. I studied the almanac for 2 months, and basically I was couldn't sleep. I was so nervous, and I backed my car into the garage door 2 weeks before being on because I forgot to open it. And I mean, if I hadn't won, I'm not sure I would have come home. But I mean, the whole thing is the buzzer on Jeopardy. You get locked out if you buzz in early, 1/10 of a second each time. So you can see them clicking all the time. You don't know if you buzz too early or too late. That's the whole key to the show.
Oh.
And the guys who were on James and Ken Jennings, they are fantastic. There's a new show, Masterminds, on Game Show Network. That's actually pretty good.
Oh, wow. Masterminds. Okay.
4 o'clock Eastern.
So maybe we could get right into, well, actually I have this kind of big picture thing. You and I have talked many times through the years. And it just struck me, I have a lot of books. Actually, there's one right here. Pardon me. All these concerns these days about like the truth, right? This is a good one.
Yeah, right. What are the facts? Right.
Yeah. So are we better equipped in 2020 to like use evidence to figure out what's real, or worse equipped?
That's a fantastic question. I was thinking about that this morning. I mean, we're hit by stuff from both sides, and with the coronavirus, we're hit with data. We don't know if it's right. So, I mean, I think if you're careful, you can find sort of the right things. But basically, you get a lot of stuff on your social media feed that it could be from Russia, it could be from a non-reputable source. So a perfect example, okay, I guess, is vote by mail. Mm-hmm. That's the hot issue. Well, there are many hot issues today. So I don't know if there's any practical evidence that there's been fraud, but then I saw an article in the New York Times that said there was one election where more people voted than were people. In theory, vote by mail seems to be open to fraud, but most studies show there's not much fraud. Now, I haven't researched that totally, but I mean, that's one good thing about sports. I don't think they fake the data on Basketball Reference. You know, I mean, what you do with the data is up to you, but we're seeing, like on COVID deaths, we don't know. We just don't know. what fraction of the population has had COVID? We have really no clue. We really don't. How accurate are these tests, the antibody tests and the test to see if you have it? We hardly know that either. And so basically, I guess it depends on, I think if you search hard, you can write something that's objective about the given issue, but you really have to search hard. I mean, so I think we are equipped if we're really willing to work hard to drill down. Like, for example, did Facebook the Facebook ads give Trump the election? Okay, what I've read about that is probably didn't make that much of a difference. Okay, although he won these 4 states by 100,000 votes total, what, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Florida. And that's like so close. He drew to win the election, and I'm an independent, I'm a moderate, to be honest with you. I mean, he basically drew to an inside straight to win that election. So did anything go on to basically determine that election? I don't, if that's your question on facts, how do we tell if somebody changed the votes? I don't know. And on absentee ballots, my mother-in-law's 99, lives in a retirement home. Somebody could go there and try and pick up every absentee or mail-in ballot. I don't know. So, I mean, it really depends on the issue, but I think we have more information at our disposal than we ever had. The question is the chaff from the wheat, or whatever the stupid phrase is. I don't know, but that's really, that's like one of the most important questions for every American or citizen of the world.
Wayne, I just want to point out that you started talking about Russian meddling, and at that exact moment, your camera feed went very blurry.
Is it back? Is it back?
No, you're all right.
Okay.
It's fine, but it definitely, I was like, you started crisp, and then you went a little out of focus.
In other words, they were trying to suppress what I said.
Yeah, a little X-Files thing happened in there.
Yeah, that's a good show, by the way.
Yeah. So there's lots of talk, as you said, about COVID, whatever. But in basketball, we've been talking a lot about Michael Jordan in The Last Dance.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you watched it or not, you clearly, in the business you've been in, you know a lot about what he did. Are you able to use analysis the way you might current players to break down really his greatness? We know he's great, but how great, and what can you do about that?
That's a great question. And so when I'm done, can you give your opinion, David, if he was the greatest ever? And Henry, I'd be curious. But I looked at this last night, okay? So I don't think he's the GOAT, okay, whatever the phrase is. I mean, I'm not sure who the GOAT is, but I believe LeBron was better. So one thing we have that everybody can look at is real plus minus on ESPN. And that's, I mean, recently Nate Silver came up with Raptor. I don't know that much about that. But real plus minus actually goes back to the 1990s, although it wasn't quite as accurate. But so we can look at some easy to understand facts, and these are facts, so we can't quarrel with these. So they won their 3rd championship, in 93, and then Jordan retired, right? And in 94, they were a good team.
Yeah.
They went, without Michael Jordan, I looked it up in Basketball Reference, they were 3 points worse as a team. That's not that much worse, because I think what people don't understand, because I was on the Warren Moneyball show once, and they love Michael Jordan. I said he's not the best player ever. He played with Pippen and Rodman, 2 top 50 players of all time. I think you'd agree. So he leaves in 94 for the first time, and they're 3 points worse, okay? And then he comes back, okay, and they win that championship, and they are basically 8 points better, okay, in the year they won the 4th title. So, I mean, that's not advanced stats. I mean, if you look at RPM in those years, there wasn't play-by-play data, so it's not quite as accurate. But Pippen was pretty much comparable to Jordan. And here's a question for you two. I'd be surprised if you get it. I wouldn't know. So, like, who do you think would, by advanced metrics, might have been the best player of the 90s? There were a lot of great players.
I have a guess.
Pippen.
Who'd you say?
Pippen.
I say David Robinson.
I would have said Barkley or Olajuwon, but I wonder how many years Olajuwon played in the 90s.
But they were both right up there in Stockton even. But if you look at the real plus minus, David Robinson dominates, not saying he was the best player, but his team wasn't that good. But getting back to your Jordan question, which I was looking forward to discussing, I'm glad you asked it. So basically he comes back in their 4th championship year, he makes them 8 points better. So let's look at LeBron, not look at any advanced numbers. LeBron leaves the Cavs, and basically they're 15 points worse the next year. And in my advanced stats say that LeBron was worth about 15 points a game at that time period. Then LeBron comes back to the Cavs, and they're 8 points better. And so, to me, a key stat is when Jordan again left the Bulls the first time, they had a good team the next year. I think they made it to the conference semifinals. That was in the Last Dance. They talked about that. And I don't think you can look at number of rings because, as you said, Barkley was a fantastic player. Stockton and Malone were fantastic players. They don't have a ring. Kobe has 5 rings. God bless him. Rest in peace. But, I don't think he was as good a player as Jordan or LeBron. I'm old, so my GOAT is Wilt Chamberlain. I went to games in Boston Garden when I was in college. And Wilt, he didn't have the teammates Bill Russell had, but I looked up the ESPN article on GOATs, and Wilt Chamberlain was on everybody's top 5 list. But the unanimity that Michael Jordan is the GOAT it's I think because of his image, and people grew up wearing those sneakers. And I don't know. I don't think statistically the LeBron versus Jordan, we can just focus on that. And I think LeBron's been better, and he's been better for more seasons. And he's not, if the NBA comes back, he may add another ring.
But you're saying statistically, I think Henry and I agree with you on LeBron. The statistics don't merit the GOAT call for Jordan. I happen to think he has it, not just because he became so incredibly famous, but because of the 6 championships. We generally speaking, we talked about this the other day regarding sneakers. Had they lost any of those incredibly close games that many of us forgot about, and the documentary reminded us of it, I don't think his reputation would have been the same. And I would tell you, Wayne, I spent time one summer with Butch Van Bredikoff. He used to come to my gym.
Winston coach, right?
Yeah, to the coach. He used to come watch me train players just to talk basketball. And then once, and I put this in my book, I spent an afternoon with Red Auerbach watching UMass practice with John Calipari. Now, what Red and I talked about, I won't ever really repeat, but we did talk about Wilt. It was very positive. With Butch, it was extremely positive as a player. You're probably right. Had he won a few more, I think he would go down as the best of all time, at least until LeBron. But I happen to think LeBron, I think Jordan has a better career if you just look at championships. But if we go beyond that, I think LeBron has been the better player. And both at his peak and over the course of his career, I think it'll be better. I would guess Henry probably feels similarly.
Oh, I definitely, to me, there's no chance that less athletic, a player from so in every sport where we can measure, everyone's gotten bigger, faster, stronger, right? Especially in the case of LeBron, right? I remember polling a bunch of NBA players about who was the fastest player in the NBA when LeBron was young, and almost everybody said LeBron. And he's also 250, 60, 70, 80 pounds, and he's faster than you. There's nothing Michael Jordan could have done with that, right? It's a total. And also, to me, actually, Wayne, you're part of this. I think, and we can talk about this more later, but the team game is much more sophisticated now. So
way more sophisticated.
LeBron's winning against teams that are playing like teams, right? That work out better. And anyway, so to me, it's, if you put them on the court together, LeBron's team is going to have an advantage over Michael Jordan's team. It just is. He's done that. And
Wilt off the court probably was not a good influence. I think David's conversations probably bore that out.
Yeah.
Because the thing about Wilt, he never fouled out of a game. So once he got 5 fouls, he didn't guard anybody. And he was big, but he played over 48 minutes a game one year.
We have 48.5, pretty amazing.
Right. Unreal.
Yeah.
If anybody ever plays over 40 minutes a game again, I'll be surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. So who are the best players right now?
Oh, okay. So this decade, the 5 best players. Okay. I tried to come up with that. So we'd have Curry.
Heard of him?
LeBron, Chris Paul, who did a great job this year. They're ahead of the Rockets now.
Amazing.
The job with OKC was incredible. Who was my 4th player? Durant. who I trashed 10 years ago. And now my fifth player, you might say James Harden, but earlier in the decade, he wasn't that great. I pick Lillard as number 5.
Oh, a surprise.
I mean, there's great young players on the horizon. Doncic, Trae Young, Embiid, Jokic, Zion Williamson, who if he keeps up what he's done without getting hurt, is going to be amazing. I'd be interested what you guys think.
Yeah, what about Ben Simmons? What do you think of Ben Simmons?
Not that big an impact.
Really?
He can't shoot.
Can't shoot.
I mean, do you think Ben Simmons will have Tatum or Ben Simmons, who will have a better career?
Oh, I probably lean Tatum now. I don't know if I would leaned a year ago, but Tatum improved hugely this season with his skill, which is what Simmons is so special regarding, separate from shooting. Ben is magical with the ball as a passer, dribbler, and defender, but not being able to shoot is such a liability, especially come postseason. Tatum is an amazing finisher, shooter, and he's really skilled with the ball now.
Yeah, I think Tatum is. I mean, he learned, I think, to improve his shot selection, which is
for sure.
That's why the Rockets are good. It's middle school math. You take layups or threes.
Mm-hmm. What about though? Actually, let me stop you there. There's one more component to this, right? So 10 years ago, we talked a lot, and you remember it as a terrible experience of your life because of some Kevin Durant comments that caused a stir. I remember it differently. I remember it as I really pressed you with basically what is the lesson of, like, how do we use advanced analytics to make better choices on the court? And you were like, look, I haven't really looked into it, but there's something about having 3 or more 3-point shooters on the court.
Oh, right. I haven't studied it more, but I think you got to spread the floor.
Yeah. So it's not quite middle school math. There's one other component, right, which is you're just making them defend a giant area, which makes every kind of attack easier, right?
And they're looking with the camera data that they have now, which they didn't have 10 years ago. They're looking at basically a mathematical measures of your spacing.
Right.
And so I think like the Raptors did some great analysis on basically where you should put your defenders. And I mean, I think the people who are looking at, again, I don't work for a team now, but the people who have the camera data, they're trying to figure out basically, is there an optimal configuration that you could summarize with one number? This is a bad setup for my players. Okay, one thing that somebody I talked to analyzed the camera data said, Del Harris, who I love, and I'm sure David, you guys know him. Yeah. He's not in Basketball Hall of Fame, is he?
I don't know,
but he's on Herb on Hoops, Henry. He's a member on our Facebook coaching page. Yeah,
he should be in Basketball Hall of Fame. But he said he had a theory: if you throw the ball into the post and throw it back out, your points per possession will be better. And I talked to somebody who's working for a team now, and they said this is true.
Yeah. And
so with the camera data, you can test simple theories like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's throwing the ball into the post. Points per possession is your gold standard.
Right.
In other words, like if you say zone defense in limited minutes reduces points per possession, how to defend pick and roll. I mean, that's a whole big thing in the NBA. But I think analytics can get, Einstein said, if you can't describe something in one paragraph, then probably it isn't worth talking about. So, I mean, most things you should.
Oh, the relativity guy? Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I don't think he could explain that. I've been reading books on quantum mechanics, and that's like quantum mechanics. Feynman, the physicist, said, if you understand quantum mechanics, then you're not understanding it, or something like that. But I think most things are not terribly complicated. I pride myself in being able to give simple explanations of things that are fairly complex. So I mean, go ahead with some more questions.
But I want to say something about Wayne and Henry, because Henry once told me that you said that, Wayne, about the power of the 3 different guys that shoot threes, which seemed, even as somebody who thinks basketball as much as I do, I'd never thought of it that way. But as soon as Henry told me that, I came up with a different idea, not necessarily for the NBA, but for basketball in general. I call it the 80% rule. I want 4 of my 5 players on the court to be elite athletes and elite shooters. I don't care about size or position. 80%.
There's no positions. I agree.
I just 4 of the 5 got to shoot threes really well, and 4 of the 5 got to be elite athletes for their size, whether you're 5'9" or 6'9". And because so many players are so skilled anyway, you should be able to have not 5 point guards on the court, because big guys can shoot too. So ever since then, when I've been helping AAU, whatever, as relative for that league, I've always tried to have that 80% rule in play with my lineups. But because of what you said to Henry, all those years ago.
It was so, I mean, at the time he said that, 20 NBA teams had never run a play designed to result in a three. Right?
Now they all do. That's all they care about.
Yeah. Now
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy the way, I mean, do you think they'll ever move the 3-point line back? Like college?
They have to widen the court.
Widen the court, yeah.
Which I think would be great. They have to widen the court. I don't know they have to get it. Honestly, as someone who's in the gym with players literally pretty much every day, if you get it deeper from the top, it won't matter. I mean, it's going to matter a tiny margin. Damian Lillard just said the other day, one of your top 5 guys, he's working on like half-court shots now because he has a gym where he lives, and he's going to be launching those in games soon. My son is 170 pounds. 35-foot shots are in his range in terms of form. He doesn't make a bunch yet. He's not Damian Lillard. But it's not hard to reach the rim. Just widening it out at least will make that corner 3 tougher to some degree, not a lot. So it's just a minuscule thing. It's going to be more of just finding long, quick guys to defend. Right now, you can't guard the 3 and the paint equally. You pretty much have to pick your poison. If you have 5 Scottie Pippins, you might be able to.
Yeah,
I mean, Scottie Pippins.
Your point was great on finding that type of lineup. Now, I've got the lineup data. One thing I've been working on with one of my students is a simulator of an NBA player's value, because you don't know when you sign a guy for 5 years what he might be worth in the future.
Right.
And so we have all the lineup data. And so, I mean, I don't know how to rate somebody as an elite athlete, but trying to find a key thing, and I don't think anybody's done this yet, what lineups play better than the sum of the parts? When is the whole greater than the sum of its parts? When is the whole less than the sum of its parts? And I think that's an unsolved problem in basketball analytics. Trying to come up with a simple to state rule that basically maybe the lineup with the 3-point shooters plays better typically than the ability of the players. I could actually check that. I haven't had the time.
When you went blurry again, if you lean in,
you sound great.
There. Focusing. I think it's a little better. Yeah.
Okay, I'll get closer.
There you go. It's going to be an intimate conversation.
My face isn't that great, so basically it's okay. All right.
You use advanced stats in advising on hiring coaches. How does that work?
Okay, so Rick Carlisle, when we're working for the Mavericks, we looked at every coach that could be available, who, when they were traded to a coach's team, improved the most in our adjusted plus minus. And Rick Carlisle dominated that. In other words, if you were on non-Rick Carlisle team 1 year and then traded to a Rick Carlisle team and you got 3 points better, just average that over every player traded to a coach's team. And Rick Carlisle basically came out the best. And I mean, I don't think Daryl Morey would mind. He worked for the Celtics before the Rockets, and he had Jeff Sagarin and I up to dinner in Indianapolis before a Pacers game. And Carlisle was the coach, and Daryl Morey called him basketball Jesus. Because he thought, here's one thing. I'd love to have you guys comment on this. So to me, there's 2 types of good coaches. There's a Rick Carlisle who says, you give me these players, I'll figure out what to do with them. Then there's Mike D'Antoni, who says, give me the players I'm good at coaching, and I'll be a really good coach. But like, if you don't give D'Antoni a center who can pick and roll and the 3-point shooters, D'Antoni, he's not going to adjust. And so basically, I think there are a lot of coaches, it's their way or the highway. And D'Antoni, I think, is a very good coach, but that's, you got to get the players that fit the system. With Rick Carlisle, he'll make the system fit the players. And I mean, I feel strongly that you want the coach, whoever you get on that team is going to max them out. And D'Antoni, I think with the Knicks, was probably not the best fit given the personnel they had.
Henry once interviewed Al Harrington, and he called me and said, give me some ideas as to what we should, he had plenty of thoughts on what to ask Al, but he said, David, what would you think I should ask? So I said, he's played for 35 NBA coaches. Ask him who his best coach was. And he did, and he said Rick Carlisle.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Al said he's got that blue card in his pocket, and he pulls out that blue card, and it has some play on it. If you do whatever's on that blue card, it's going to work.
No, that's true. And then one more point on coaches. So when coaches set up their lineups, okay, so Del Harris told me this. He said there's 2 philosophies. The Mavericks would come in, their lineups written on a card like the play coding in the NFL. And I'm going to do these lineups unless we get in foul trouble in this order. But I think most coaches match up. They say, I'll put this guy in because he can guard that guy. And so you can have two different, I don't know which is the better strategy, but basically that's another way coaches differ. In other words, are you going to react to your opponent, or are you going to set the tone with the lineups? And I don't know which is better.
So I think this really interesting thing you brought up that is something, my book that I wrote is called Basketball is Jazz. There's a reason for that. So analytics can tell us what you were saying, when the sum of the parts are greater than what they were anticipated being, but they've not been able to tell us yet in advance of that. So you've got 5 guys that look like they should win 46 games, but they win 58 because of Jazz. They just mesh perfectly. Will you ever get good at projecting that? Because that takes some art. It's not just science. You've got to have science projecting the art. How do they do that?
Well, Mark Cuban had this guy, Bob Chaikin, who I think tried to do that. In other words, you come up with a computer simulation, you put these guys on your team and you play it out. But I think that can't work. Now in baseball, it can work. So what the Red Sox do, they hired as one of their top analytics guys, the guy who created the best baseball simulation called Diamond Mind. And it took the parts into account. So what they would do is they would say, I'm going to trade for this guy. I can put him in the lineup in this part. Now it doesn't, even that doesn't account for like a clubhouse cancer. What was it? Malcolm Bradley on the Cubs. And there's great, and you guys would know, like who's a great clubhouse guy in the NBA? Chris Paul and James Harden, not a great clubhouse, I believe.
Damian Lillard. Everything is Damian Lillard.
Right.
The answer is always Lillard.
You're a Blazers fan, right?
Yep.
But he's right.
Terry Stotts went to high school in Bloomington, Indiana, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So he's from Bloomington, Indiana.
Okay.
Damian and Steph Curry both are the epitome of what you want. Both incredibly talented, productive, as well as your best friend in the best way. Like Tim Duncan was that too.
Maybe psychologically, maybe with these psychology tests, you can, maybe the thing that makes the lineups not mesh or counteracts the Jazz is personality types. And I think the teams are looking at that, but that's just not my area. My personality is not that good. So, I mean, I try and stay away from that. I say what I think, which is a problem.
I think, I don't know how it's very difficult to assess at draft time, right? Who's going to be a good teammate. But I'm joking about my being a Blazer fan and Lillard being the best. But Kevin Arnowitz wrote this story about Lillard using an off day to take a young, uncelebrated player shopping and make him feel included and noticed. And I'm like, well, maybe that's just a one-off story they tell the journalists. But the proof was in the pudding for me when C.J. McCollum had a chance to be a max free agent. He could be the star of the Knicks. True. And he turned down the opportunity to re-up with Lillard. And when on his podcast, they asked him why, he said, because he loved him. I'm like, well, that's great. That's a big deal.
And Lillard, maybe you would know. So Lillard, when he was drafted, how did they know he was, how did they know he was good? Because, I mean, he played for a small school.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he's exceeded everybody's expectations. So what about him in college made them know he'd be so good? I'm curious.
I think
didn't know that.
I think teams should learn more from that. Same as Ja Morant with what his one season in college. What I've noticed is the difference between high major players and mid major are minuscule now. Minuscule.
I think
in some cases they just have better weight rooms and conditioning and their training coaches, whatever. So that's a huge advantage. But there's such a small difference between them that the mid-major guy could go to high major and be great. In fact, we're seeing it more and more now with grad transfers. You get mid-majors going to high majors, playing in high levels in the NCAA tournament, and they were considered mid-major when they went to school when they were 18. At the time of 21, they're very good. And that's another thing too, is Lillard was playing against older players in those mid-major leagues because they don't lose many to the pros early and outplaying older guys, which is just as hard as playing a super talented but young 18-year-old. Lillard is, I don't know. I think that we need, what you said is right. How you guess how they're going to be chemistry-wise isn't easy. And it's even more complex when you mention someone like Chris Paul, who has been he wasn't a problem early in his career. Deron Williams was.
Right.
Then CP3 became a pain in the ass to play with. But how would you ever explain what happened this year? I wrote a column last month.
Yeah, I don't know.
I named him the best offensive player in the league. What he was able to do with that team was extraordinary. I mean, their second best offensive player was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, one of the youngest guys in the league. So what he did, and yet, could he always have done that? Probably. So that's a big thing too, is where you can get players to be that person consistently, because CP3 has been on a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, we had some comments here. If I just could say one thing, like a lot of people want to get into sports analytics, and the best way to do that is do a project and do something nobody's done. So one of the people commented, teams screw up the draft all the time. And that's, I mean, Michael Olowokandi, I mean, whatever. I mean, you guys would know more names than me.
I seem to be Anthony Bennett. Yeah.
But if you come up with, you can show a team. In other words, we have every person who's been drafted, NBA or NFL, and we know how well they've done. So if you could show, using the information you had when the draft occurred, a model that would do better at picking than the teams, a team would hire you. In other words, I mean, that's an example. I mean, like Tom Brady, 200th pick, okay, and Ginobili and Parker ended the second round. So, I mean, basically, if you could show, given the information, objective information that was available to teams, that basically you could do a better job of picking than teams do, then a team would hire you. I mean, like, who's it? Mel Kiper, supposedly, does he do a great job of figuring out who's going to be great in the NFL? I have no idea. So one key thing is people make forecasts. What we really, and COVID is a great example. We had all these forecasting models for COVID, and basically no site tracks how accurate they all were. Now, there is a site that tracks accuracy of betting, predictiontracker.com. We have stock analysts. We know how stocks do. There's no site that tracks how the analyst did. I would like to know who's good at picking stocks before I put my money in something. We desperately need to line up basically actual results versus forecasts.
There was a website that did that for, I think, Henry, I think I may have sent this to you. They looked at all the prognosticators' postseason predictions in media over 5 years. It's hard to do that. I mean, picking these playoff series is hard, but they did that. And I remember seeing the headline. Someone had sent it to me, so I assumed I did okay because it was a friend that sent it, not an enemy. But I was nervous when I looked it up to see, because, I mean, prediction is hard. There's lots of variables. And no one cares about the variables.
David, you were the winner, and Stephen A. Smith was the loser. He was like the last ranked one. His prediction
was he? I don't remember that. Was he really last?
Yeah.
I know Wilbon was pretty low.
Yogi Berra said prediction is hard, especially about the future.
But exactly
right. but Wayne, you said something else. When you talked about Carlisle and the impact he's had, and Henry knows, I believe this strongly, I think that's a big part of these draft successes. It's the culture they're going to. It's the coach that they're going to, what the personnel looks like. I don't know if Olowokandi, I don't really remember him all that well. He may have been terrible no matter where he went. I know I spoke to a teammate. I can say it. I spoke to Luol Deng right after he got traded. He had been with, he was in Cleveland. So he was with Cleveland, and Bennett was a rookie there, Anthony Bennett. And he said, unbelievably talented guy. May not ever figure it out, but incredibly talented guy. And we know Cleveland's been a wreck other than the few years with LeBron. Had Bennett gone somewhere else, who knows what would have happened. So I don't think it's just picking the draft pickers. I think it's also the whole environment that the GM and the coach create to develop talent. Just like in any business, whether it's data or financial, you can hire people out of Harvard, but if you have a bad culture or bad management, they're not going to do as well as they would otherwise.
No, that's like Belichick with Brady.
Right.
Exactly how I feel. I feel exact same way.
So wait, we have 10, 15 minutes left. Let's pretend that I'm Adam Silver and I'm hiring let me get your professor title here. Professor Emeritus of Decision Sciences. Sounds like a good person to add to my panel of advising the league on reopening. How can we, the league, make good choices about player and coach and staff safety as we attempt to reopen?
Well, I think you've got to test everybody every day. And I mean, I think there's enough tests to do that. But I guess here's one thing I don't know. So like I could be tested in the morning and then I could get the disease in the afternoon. I mean, I don't know. But, I mean, I
Well,
think
I understand you can pass the test. You can have received the infection and have it not fully expressed yet and pass the test while you're still contagious, is what I gather.
I mean, most of these people are low risk. I mean, they'd have to assume some risk, although I guess some of the scouts and who's the oldest coach in the league? I don't know.
I think we're
D'Antoni?
talking about D'Antoni's pretty old, Popovich.
Popovich, yeah.
And there's some
Pop,
assistants who are very old.
Gentry, KC 67, but yeah, Pop might be the oldest.
So, I mean, they're in a high risk group. I mean, I'm sure they're willing to take the risk because, again, we don't know the fatality rate. It varies greatly. Like if you have a pre-existing, none of these players, as far as I know, have a pre-existing condition. Like, well, I guess some of them have heart problems, don't they? Who had a couple of NBA players?
Somebody has autoimmune.
Ingram had a clot issue.
Yeah.
Which issue?
A clot.
Ingram had a clotting issue.
Oh, that's right.
Year.
So, I mean, I think but they could advise on that. But I mean, I think you can play in one place. You monitor them, and basically, the thing is, the game starts if you're tested right before the game, and LeBron's test positive, he's out for the next 2 weeks, right until you get 3 negative tests. That's the way it works. And I mean, that's the best case scenario, right? I mean, you test everybody every day, and basically right before the game, I think, to get as accurate a result as possible with the best test out there. And then basically the rule is, I mean, well, I guess if you test positive, gosh, I don't know, because if he tests positive, then do you have to quarantine the whole team? I think it's hard to make this work. I have to be honest. What do you guys think? Because here's the case, like LeBron tests positive,
right?
Then basically everybody's been in contact. I guess they stay in separate hotel rooms, but you know, LeBron was guarded by everybody on the team that were playing in the series. So, I mean, do they have to all be quarantined? I mean, I don't see a way to make it work. I got to be blunt about that. What do you guys think after thinking about it now?
So they've been talking, so one of the conundrums that we've been hearing about is that the rapid tests are not very accurate, and the accurate tests take a couple of days.
Rapid.
So plus there's this, you might be contagious while you're passing a test anyway, right? So to me, there's no argument that there's a safe, like a sort of, with any kind of guarantee, any kind of science where we know we're safe. Instead, this is a decision science thing, right? There's a transaction. Maybe everybody wants to do this, just like maybe everybody wants to do a little more socializing than we do, right? So there's a dollar value, right? Like Damian Lillard's saying that it's not worth it to him without the prospect of the playoffs. He won't play. He won't risk his health unless the Blazers are eligible for the playoffs, right? There's a weird transaction going on here where LeBron wants to win. Probably the Bucks really want to play because they might win a championship, right? But if you're the Warriors, why would you do this, right? It doesn't make any sense.
No regular season. I mean, there's no way you should play any more regular season games. Maybe put 20 teams in. But I think after talking to you guys, my advice would be they just stay in isolation and they take the risk that if they get it, they get it. And I mean, if they're all sequestered, they interact with nobody else. And basically you can test them, but they keep playing among themselves. And if it's risky, I mean, I think they're at very low risk. The fatality rate for the type of player in the NBA has got to be less than 0.5%. I mean, that's, again, we don't know the fatality rate because we don't know the deaths, and the denominator is how many people have had this. And that's the thing we have no clue on. And we've got to do randomized testing to figure out the prevalence in the population. And why we're not doing more of this when we have enough tests is beyond me. We need random. Indiana did a random sample, said I think 3 to 4% of the people had it 2 weeks ago. But I mean, and by the way, Florida, where David is, they evidently changed the numbers on the state site. And so can we trust? We're supposed to fly to Florida, Fort Myers next week, but I don't think we're going to do it.
I don't even trust David.
Well, you're not touching him. You're not within 6 feet, right?
Yeah, no, only on Zoom for sure. Yeah.
No, but I really. But do you agree the only way they can do that? I mean, do you see a way besides what I said? They all got to stay in their own rooms, and basically they make the compact, the referees and everybody. We're going to play this to play this through. And basically, if people get sick, I mean, they don't interact with anybody else, so they can't get anybody outside of the league sick. I think that's a given. No fans, that's a given. I think we've got to do that. There's a lot of questions here on the chat. I don't know.
It's all happening. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think you're on something really important, Wayne, because it goes to what Henry says all the time about the coaches. Don't forget the referees. How about executives? They're going to want to go watch their teams play, right?
And the staff, the trainer, and I mean, people who travel with the team. Everybody sort of got. Major League Baseball was supposed to test everybody, but the results never came out. In other words, they tested the hot dog vendor, everybody who worked in Major League Baseball. Stanford did that project, but I have not seen the results. That would give us a good idea of prevalence across the country. But I think basically the only way this makes sense is to basically say this is going to be a closed group of people. They can't see their families. They can't see anybody else. And no regular season, because you're right. Who wants to play the last 10 games? But the playoffs, I mean, you could have a 20-team play-in to make it down to 16. And if everybody buys in, knowing that they're at some risk, then I'd say go ahead and do it. Hopefully nothing. Yeah, the Cavs should be in. Somebody commented, right? They're terrific.
But they, less than 0.5% fatality rate. You're saying one of the estimates I saw was that 3,500 people would have to be in the bubble for it to function.
I'd buy that, but I mean, if they're willing to do it, it's not that Orlando has plenty of. They could each almost have their own hotel,
Right, but the numbers are big enough that you could have death.
I think 35. I mean, there's so many hotel rooms. I mean, you could 3,500. Just that's 2 hotels. I mean, how many hotels do you need for that? And you just say nobody sees these, comes within 6 feet of these people. They're their own 3,500 person community.
No, right. Epe Udo went to play in China, and when he arrived, he spent 2 weeks in a dorm room with a camera on the door. So if he left, he got in trouble, and so he didn't leave. That seems like terrible, but also how you could be pretty sure he's not bringing the coronavirus into the bubble of his team in China, right? They are not going to do that here.
No, you can't. But I mean, if you just keep those people, if they understand that there's a risk they could get sick and that they're going to have to be then quarantined, players may have to bow out of the tournament. Yeah. But basically, if they're willing to I think they've got to take the risk that they're going to be in a totally self-contained bubble for the duration of the playoffs.
Yeah.
I mean, but do you think these people? Do you think they're willing to go that? What would be the limitations on contact with people, the non-3,500 people? Has Adam Silver thought about that? Do you know?
I mean, we've had leaks. They haven't had the press conference where they take hard questions. They've had favored journalists.
That's the question to ask.
Yeah. So what the leaks have been, it'll be a campus-like environment. And Jared Dudley said that he understands from the Players Association that they'd be allowed to leave and go out to dinner.
That should not be allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, Disney is supposed to do a phase reopening.
They definitely are. There is. Listen, if they want to make it like communist Russia and communist China, where they just lock things down, it really becomes that 3,500 community bubble, and no one can get in or out of that bubble. But within the bubble, and I don't just mean, I mean a physical one where I know Disney really, really well. My son's played 100 games, and where they're talking about playing these NBA games, there is a way to live in that community and never have to leave it. As long as all the food you need is in there the whole time. And there's also, I think, an opportunity for the NBA to really get into fine details at identifying the risks involved. But they can't say there's no risk. And that's what we're talking about here is there's going to be – it's just impossible to imagine. Henry made a point to me yesterday about trying to control nature. He compared it to Jurassic Park. And I right away thought of Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum's character from the movie Jurassic Park in the book. He's a chaos theory guy, right? The one thing you definitely can't control is nature. We know we can't control this virus. So if they want to try to be that controlling, we are begging for calamity, which is what a movie like Jurassic Park is all about. We're asking for something. And Henry's point is with 3,500 people, even at less than 1% of risk, the chance of someone dying from this is there. And what will the consequence of that be?
No, that's a good point. But I mean, I think if you kept them, if they understand the risk, and the fatality rate is, let's say, 1 in 200 for people who get it among these players. Now, how many people are going to get it? Probably not. Well, I mean, if one person gets it, it would spread within the bubble. I think that's probably given the data on the Diamond Princess ship, which is the best data set they have, where they've estimated most of the key parameters for coronavirus. Well, they were in very close quarters, and they can keep these people. I mean, everybody should be in their own room. They should eat 6 feet apart. I mean, they should wear masks when they're in the hotel. I mean,
Henry thinks they shouldn't even take the team bus. It's a brilliant idea.
Drive yourself, right?
They should each have their own car.
Exactly,
You're
Henry.
right.
I thought that was a great idea.
Well, and they should play outside. I mean,
That was a great idea, but that's such a different. That would give you a double asterisk.
Yeah, you're right. We don't have that much time left. In the chat, a different David is asking a lot of questions. I'm going to summarize by saying analytically sound basketball, in David's view, is boring to watch.
This is not me. This is him.
A different David.
Yeah.
The 3 points in the layups, I agree. I prefer the old game if that's what the point is. Any shot that's between a 3-pointer and a layup averages 0.8 points per possession. That's terrible. A layup averages about 1.3 points per possession, a 3-pointer 1.05. And so basically the Rockets don't shoot better than average on the shots they take. They take better than average shots.
They take more of them.
Boring. I agree that's boring. That's but that's like, do you think the Mona Lisa is a good painting when you go look at it in the Louvre? It looks terrible. I mean, everything's subjective, but I would agree. To me personally, I preferred the old style basketball to when they drive the lane and they knock them down.
All right, the Mona Lisa of our show is Jerrod Hector, who will join us now to ask better questions than we ask. I think that's the first time I've introduced him that way. How's it going, Jerrod?
I'm good. The Mona Lisa of the show, Henry. So Wayne, this is means. I don't know either. Because you're waiting online to see this thing, and you get to the Louvre, and you're like, "This sucks. I'm going out. I'm getting out of here."
Where is Jerrod at?
Well, speaking of, I'm in Paris right now.
Oh my God!
Not.
No, he's lying. He's not in Paris.
Wayne, this is good. Following up on some of the stuff you were saying, this analytics thing is such a difficult conversation because when you're sort of breaking things down, I love to use it because it tells us what's factually true. But I feel like so many times it takes the enjoyment out of the actual game itself. Like, this is supposed to be fun and enjoying, not arguing about who is 0.5% better from this particular shot from the corner. And I'm wondering, because of your background, does that change the way you watch hoops, or do you still, when you're watching it, my data mind is off and I'm just having a good time enjoying the game? And I'll talk about that stuff later. My data mind is off on the shots, but when I look at the lineups and I see coaches put bad lineups out there, I'll be honest, Indiana, I tried to help the Indiana basketball team. So my students in my math and sports class, we collected every minute who's on the court and how we did. And I mean, I couldn't get them to look at the numbers that I would create versus the numbers their numbers would say, we play Savannah State, which is 50 points worse than Michigan State. If you win by 5 points, it counts the same. That was idiotic. So this breaks my heart because I knew I went go on Dan Dockage's show the last 2 weeks in Koloff, and I'd say you play these 3 guys together, we're really good, but we hardly play them. So what happens in the Big Ten tournament? We play these 3 guys together, we beat Penn State by 15 points in 5 minutes, and then the season's canceled. Because I think we finally figured it out. So, I mean, I agree. In baseball, I think analytics has really destroyed the sport much more. It's either everybody swings for a home run or a strikeout.
Right.
And that's terrible. I mean, I think NBA is still a great game to watch. NFL, honestly, analytics, they don't know much yet. The cameras just came in. But I mean, my data mine turns on to the lineups. And if a team, when J.R. Smith takes a guarded long too, my analytics mind turns on. But he can make them.
Yeah.
That's the funny. He shoots better guarded than open. What kind of crazy question is that? But
Well,
that's a great question. Analytics can ruin a sport. In baseball, I've talked to many baseball people who are really know baseball, and they, to a person, think the game now is just not as good. And I was an Astros fan, and I don't know what to do since
because they're only swinging. Is it because they're not just swinging for homers? Because my son played, they're training to swing for homers every day.
They want barrels.
Is that why it's bad? Is just that home runs and strikeouts only?
Well, yeah, because they're thinking the shift is hurt. Is your son left-handed?
No.
That's good because the shift killed lots of hitters.
Yeah.
So that's analytics. Should they outlaw the shift? I can see pros and cons on that. But baseball and bunting is bad. Building a run. They've known since the book Moneyball. Before, actually, they knew 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Bunting is this dumb play. Bunting is like the long two with 20 seconds left on the shot clock. And
Coach, do you see that? I know you work with a lot of young players. Do you see them only coming in and shooting threes and
no?
Because if you work on the mid range, you can be good at it.
We do everything as long as you're playing in a league that has a clock. So I don't do much mid range. I don't help high school kids except for my son's team. But we played a lot of games this year because they actually played a post grad schedule. If we played a college team with a shot clock, which we probably 10 shot clock games. I think we had 4 violations in 10 games. So we played pretty fast. We made sure we put in a lot of mid-range stuff that week because the clock becomes the extra defender. You better get a shot at the rim. But for all my players globally that play in leagues with shot clock, we have to have everything because if you can score late on the clock along a middle two, a floater, a mid-range shot fake, freeze fake shot, you're building value because some of your teammates are not able to score late in the clock. So you have to practice it, but it's 25% of your workout in terms of shooting. The other stuff, 75% is at the rim or behind three for sure.
Well, the decision to shoot isn't categorical. So by this I mean, like Wayne cited those numbers earlier of 0.8 for a mid-range shot and 1.05 for a 3 and 1.2 was it for 1.3 for a layup?
1.3 I think.
So that's the average, but it's not for Dirk.
Right.
Yeah. Dirk's mid-range.
Lionel Aldridge.
Yeah. So, there's like, by the time you're going like this, you know who you are, right? Like,
Melo.
I get mad when people say like, oh, the mid-range is done. What's that?
Melo took bad shots his whole career. He was good at taking bad shots. Right. But he scored the 25,000 points or whatever. But he never was, to my mind, not a Hall of Fame player, which is another conversation.
And a chapter in your book, I noticed.
Right, that's right. But I'll talk about that another time. But that's fine.
We're almost out of time. I did notice one of the other chapters of your books is should I go to Penn State or Harvard? I'm interested in that.
Okay. I want to hear this.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously, it costs you less money to go to State University than to go to an Ivy League school. And so, how would you tell if a Harvard education adds more? Harvard graduates make more money than Penn State graduates. But so I guess it was a guy, Alan Kruger, unfortunately, a Princeton professor of economics, unfortunately passed away, killed himself.
Oh boy.
A year or two ago. And basically he and his colleagues did a study. How would you study the value of a Harvard education? Okay, so the argument was if you went to Harvard, then basically you did better in life, but you have better inputs at Harvard, okay, than Penn State on average. No offense to Penn State. Okay, except in football, you have better inputs to Penn State. But basically, you look at people who got into both Penn State and Harvard.
Yeah.
You get to see how they did later in life, and they didn't do any different. So basically, if you took basically inputs that were sort of the same and looked at how they performed, and the only difference was the school they went to, it didn't make that much difference.
Right.
So basically, at Indiana, we get a lot of really good kids now from the East Coast and West Coast. And God knows what this CV-19 is going to do to residential state schools. Right. That's like a huge, we don't know if we're opening in person in the fall or not. Notre Dame starting August 1st and ending by Thanksgiving because they think the second wave might hit after Thanksgiving. Right. And how do we play college football? God knows. College basketball, I'm hoping it'll be okay, but with no fans. But that's the answer to your question, Henry. You block out, what we always try and do is block out the effect of the variable we need to block out, which is basically the ability of the student. So we look at students, basically, if they got into Penn State and Harvard, they're probably equivalent. And you can check that, same SAT scores, stuff like that. And then in life later, they don't do any different. So basically, I mean, it's okay to go to Penn State if you're a really smart kid, or go to Indiana.
So get into Harvard and then go wherever you want.
Right. Basically, that was a really interesting, I never would have thought about that. I read it in some book.
The New York Times did an article about this a couple weeks ago, because my nephew was looking at Harvard. I've been he's going to Duke, but he was looking at Harvard too. So I'll send it to you. I'll email it to you.
Yeah, Duke's a good school, although I hate them in basketball, but that's
You're not alone.
But Zion will be if he stays healthy,
amazing.
Zion's going to be something amazing.
I think so too.
Like LeBron, good?
If he stays healthy, I don't think he'll ever play that many minutes in that many years, given his track record, thanks to Nike sneakers, I guess that probably.
Shots fired.
But basically, they won by 11 points a game, I think, when he was in the game this year. I looked it up. That's pretty amazing. And Drew Holiday, by the way, is a very underrated player.
Terrific player. Yeah.
Wayne, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks. I enjoyed it. Anytime you want, just let me know.
Okay, super great. We'll talk again.
Thanks.
David,
Thanks,
Jerrod,
everybody.
Judy.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you, everyone.